Hello, my name is Becky Tuttle, and I am taking a very short period of time to introduce you to something that may really help with your academic portfolio. How many people either have an educator's portfolio or have it on their to-do list to get one done? Okay. Not everyone? Not everyone? Okay. So a lot of people, I think, in academic emergency medicine require these for promotion and tenure. And there are several different columns in an academic portfolio that are required for basically demonstrating your educational endeavors. Some of the columns are what is the activity. One column may be like how many learners are involved or how many hours. And then the final column, which often, for me anyway, is blank, is the quality of your talk. Now, how many people know about what I'm talking about here with the column of quality? Okay. Does anybody have a strategy already for filling in that column? I do. Thank you, Simran. She's a plant. So that is, I think, pretty common. I think that a lot of people don't, that column goes blank. Maybe I would say the most common way that people fill that column is after giving a talk, they will get feedback from the event organizers and then take that metric and put it in that column. Okay. And I would say that that's probably the most common way. Now, with a lot of foam out there, there are ways to generate like page views and other, maybe the Brett Thoma score. You can add in lots of different things that may demonstrate the quality of your educational endeavors, but this is a very fast, very simple way to do it. So the first thing that if you have a laptop out, I encourage you to have that out during this talk, and you can try to go through this with me. If you have a phone out, there's also the possibility of doing this on your phone, but I find it a little bit more cumbersome because it's based in Google Docs. So the first thing that will kind of ensure you will take away are the 3 learning points or educational learning objectives. The first one being that you will be able to create an online survey so that you can generate quality for your educator's portfolio. The second being creating an easy to distribute link. And then finally, how you can take that raw data and put it into your educator's portfolio in a functional way. So there are lots of different survey tools out there. SurveyMonkey is very popular. It limits the number of free uses you can have. I think about 100 survey respondents for the free version. And I have one survey link in Google Forms, which is why I'm kind of promoting Google Forms right now. And I can have unlimited respondents, unlimited uses, whatever. So I highly recommend, if you're following along with your laptop, going to forms.google.com and going in. This is their survey function, and you can create your own Google form. Okay, so if you found your way to this page, you can see that they have different templates. I chose apparently t-shirt sign up one over here, the purple one. And you can see this is what mine looks like in the raw behind the scenes version. I am not tech savvy. I don't know anything about the brackets and slashies that we were talking about during the last wiki talk, but I can use Google Forms. So you see at the top it says Becky Thyla /Tuttle because I got married and changed my name, and now everything is ruined. No, I'm kidding. But you can fill in. I just have a few short questions. Don't worry if you're really jonesing to see what mine looks like. You will get the opportunity to fill it out at the end. And you can see you have a title. I've chosen the professional picture that was funded by OHSU to make me look beautiful. And then following the different questions that you may ask for your feedback. Now, the key in making the transition from this to your educator's portfolio is having a metric. Now, you may choose a Likert scale, like a 1 to 5. Did this really suck? Was it super amazing? Something like that. You could have, was this successful? Yes or no? And maybe you just want to have a percentage of respondents who said that it was helpful. And I bet you'll get 100% every time, and your portfolio will look amazing. But if you want to be a little bit more detailed and maybe allow people to give you the 3s or the 4s or the 5s or whatever, hopefully not the 1s and the 2s, but hey, that's good feedback. So for me, these are my 2 questions. Was the presenter successful? And then the overall presentation I actually have both of these, and then if it's a really terrible talk, I may just switch over and say the percentage of people that thought it was helpful. In Google Forms, this is what the raw data looks like, and so this sort of skips ahead to what you would interpret and pull into your educator's portfolio. I picked a section of talks when I was scored really highly for demonstration, so you can see I got all 5s during this PA lecture that I gave. That is totally reflective of every score I've ever received. But of course not. So the first column here, we have the date that I did it. The second column, I have what worked well. And these actually are really helpful as well for the qualitative parts of your portfolio. If you want to have pull quotes that, you're wow, so dynamic and engaging, that sounds great. Put it in quotes. Some random anonymous person said it, but it wasn't me, I promise. And then you have that, which I actually think this is also really useful when it comes to like award nominations and someone, I am part of an awards and recognition committee at OHSU, and we're constantly submitting feedback, or like if I'm nominating an educator, I want these quotes from educators and learner, or from the students to put into their nomination forms. And it's very helpful to have qualitative information as well. So I find these comments very helpful. The second column of what didn't work well, I use that when I represent talks and people say, oh, I talk too fast, so I have to slow down, and that column reminds me to do that. And then finally, the whether I was successful or not, tips to change, like, oh, that slide was super offensive, maybe change that out for a picture of a baby, something like that. And then finally, this is how I've interpreted it into my educator's portfolio. You can see I have my teaching role, the year that it was done, the quantity of like the hours or the number of learners. And these are all the columns that we know how to fill out, and we can do that no problem. And then you can see in my quality column, I've sort of created an average where I've gone in and just used, since it's an Excel-based form, I just select all of the talks that had my score from 1 to 5. I average it out on the side, and it's very easily generated from, and doesn't that look so great, like 4.88 out of 5? Like, that's a real statistic, And then finally, that is how you can get it into your educator's portfolio. The last step is, how do I disseminate this? And I could give somebody the google.com/XYZ3 uppercase T-E, but I think that that's like a hard thing for people to really quickly plug in. And instead, I've used tinyurl.com. I think a lot of people have their favorite URL shortener. Tiny.cc, I think, is another one. Anybody else have any to share suggestions for URL shorteners that they like? Bitly. Does Bitly allow you to customize your personal name? Okay, so that one is a pretty common one, and people, it's not like sketchy because like everyone knows Bitly, right? So that one is probably a little less sketchy than these. But anyway, now that you know about this, the final slide I have is my slide that you can see my own feedback. And since this was a talk, and I want your feedback, if you could go to mytinyurl.com/TuttleFeedback and fill out my short questionnaire, I would really appreciate it, because I plan on putting this talk in my educator's portfolio. Now, before I hand over the clicky, any questions that you might have? Okay, well, good luck. For those of you that may have been following along on Google Forms, I hope you were able to create it, and I really highly recommend giving it a try. Yes?
I have a question. Does your institution do they have like an official way to collect feedback? And this is
yes.
Yeah,
that is true, and they do, and I'm pretty sure it's illegal what I'm doing, but I do it anyway, because I use this when I'm presenting within the institution or outside of the institution. And I think we use REDCap as like a survey tool. Because I'm not generating research off of it, I think that there's a kind of a way to get around it. And also there's a special training that we have to go to use the institution approved software. So I've elected not to do that. And I plan on taking this with me beyond, like if I change institutions or whatever.
At least for me, I always feel like, where is my feedback?
Right. No, and that's a really good point, because every week during conference, we fill out these surveys, And it's very, I think, at least in my experience, you may wait several months before you get the feedback, or sometimes you present at a talk outside of the institution and you never get that feedback. And sometimes you don't even know who to ask, and it can be really hard to get, even though it exists somewhere in someone's folder, right? The other thing is that sometimes I've given talks and then I'm handed a stack of evaluations at the end that I have to manually go through and add up and do an average and like type in comments so that I have it in an electronic form. And that to me is quite cumbersome. So having it already put into an online form is very helpful.
And I'll be doing this presentation with Dr. Dimitri.
So my role has been as a senior mentor, so I'm sort of behind the scenes. I'm not going to be talking too much, fortunately, but my name is Dimitri Papanagnou. You can just call me Dimitri. Associate Professor in the Department of Emergency Medicine at Jefferson, where I'm also the Vice Chair. And in the medical school, I'm the Associate Dean for Faculty Development. So when faculty issues come up, that's where I'll chime in.
I tried to figure out how to get my residents from looking like this in our conference, where they're on their phone, they're sleeping, to something like this, where they're more engaged and learning. So how do we do this? How do we do this with no money and no resources? Well, I don't have to read every unit. There are a lot of other people, a lot of other experts across the country who've already laid the groundwork for this. And what we decided to do is we decided to survey you all. We decided to send out an 8-question survey to CORE to try and figure out what are other residencies doing. Are they incorporating FuelMed? Are they incorporating Flip Classroom? How are they doing this? What are the barriers? We actually got 44 responses from 37 residencies. So not the biggest end, but a small sampling to give us an idea of what's going on. And of those, 30 out of the 37 are actually using FuelMed in their residency curriculum, and 29 were using Flip Classroom. So, that's about 80%. 80% of our respondents are actually using this. So you might be sitting there thinking, well, these places are big institutions, they have a lot of resources, there's a lot of core faculty, but in fact, we did query them about what are the major barriers that they face. And this is what we found. Now, there are a number of barriers, but we're going to be focusing on the top 3. And the number one barrier that was faced by almost 80% of the respondents is that residents do not want to read outside. Right? The number 2 barrier is that faculty want to do PowerPoint presentations, they don't want to do small group sessions. And the number 3 barrier is that there's really not enough for faculty to facilitate small groups. So this isn't news to anybody. You guys all know that residents don't want to read and faculty don't want to change, right? This is like the most obvious survey there is, right? But, but I would say that, the major issue here is going to be, what is underlying all this stuff? And I would say that the most important thing is that realizing that faculty and residents think their time is valuable, right? So what they want to do is they want to maximize the return on investment of their time investment. So what does that mean for residents? That means maximizing their skill set, maximizing their medical knowledge, right, with as little time as possible, right? So with faculty, what does that mean? That means enhancing your CV, being involved in scholarship, again, with as little time investment as possible, right? So how do we do this? So the session is called Phone in the Real World, right? So I'm going to make my case on how you can use FuelMed to actually as a solution to some of these issues. So what's the first issue? The first issue that was touted as the number one issue is that residents don't want to read, right? And you're thinking, I've tried everything, I've threatened them, there's no way they're going to read. Well, I would say if you can't do an overnight overhaul to get asynchronous learning in your shop, your first step should be on-site preparation. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing some of our residents actually listening to a podcast in preparation for a small group session. They know that they're going to be accountable for this material and that they're going to have to teach this material to their peers. So this is the first strategy that I would use, and that I did use, to actually create buy-in from the residents and from some of our faculty members. So how do you do this, right? You're thinking, that's great, there's so many resources out there, there's so many podcasts, there's so many blogs, how do I choose? Well, over the past year and a half, probably longer, there's been an enhancement of vetted material out there, right? At this conference, we've heard about EM fundamentals, we've heard about EM foundation, and I was kind of overwhelmed with the amount of material out there too. So what did I do? I went to Alien Air. And, this is something that your residents can sign up for, and you can, follow this to a T. We didn't actually sign up for this, but the modules are available. And this is vetted material from, experts from around the country who've actually taken the time to look at these podcasts, look at these blogs, pick out the journals, and think that this material is good enough for residents to teach it. So I picked and choose what I could to bring that into our curriculum to create that environment. So now I'm going to talk about my second strategy, just-in-time learning. So what is this? This is where you're letting your adult learners prime themselves before a simulation or a demonstration. So it might mean letting them watch a YouTube video on a procedure before bringing them into a simulation. Sounds simple, right? Here, what you're seeing is two of our interns are actually demonstrating maneuvers with shoulder distortion using the low fidelity sim. They had to read a comprehensive article on the different types of maneuvers, and then they had to demonstrate this to their peers and teach their peers. I can't take credit for this low fidelity sim. Dr. Daniel Hart at Hennepin was the first to do this, and it was brought to us by my partner in crime, Dr. Jafar Almonsi, who's been instrumental in this. All right, so I'm going to move on to my third strategy. Bringing your seniors in as leaders. Now, they're already leaders in your department, right? They run resuscitations, they teach the junior residents, they know how to do procedures, so bring them into the classroom, right? Here what you're seeing is one of our board review sessions. My senior right here is actually leading some of the juniors in board review. What we did is we took typical board review questions, turned them into kind of flashcards, and we had the senior be the person giving the questions. And what this did is this facilitated discussion between the classes. The seniors got to show off their knowledge, and they actually did board review, which was quite amazing. So what's your return on investment here? So I would say with on-site preparation, with just-in-time learning, with bringing in your seniors as your leaders in your classroom, you're going to develop a peer-to-peer teaching curriculum, you're going to enhance peer accountability, and you're going to develop buy-in. Now, our residency is moving towards asynchronous learning. We're not quite there yet, but I think that if we continue on this path, we're definitely getting there. The residents are demanding more and more of these high-quality experiences and lectures, and I don't think that, the PowerPoint presentations are going to be tolerated anymore. So now we're going to move on to faculty.
Thanks for leaving me with the easy part. So I have 4 minutes to talk about how you can engage your faculty. So by show of hands, how many of you deal with faculty in your respective departments or academic medical centers? Okay, how many of you are in charge in training them and maybe perhaps guiding them to the right resources that they can integrate to make sure that these ideas that Tina's putting forward are actually executable? Pretty easy, right? By show of hands, how many of you can navigate these waters pretty seamlessly? So, I thought so. So, in the next 1.5 minutes, I would like to talk to you about engaging the right stakeholders, maybe talking about some new roles in your department, linking things with the Office for Faculty Development, talking about some resources, and quantifying all of these things. How many of you have for those of you affiliated with academic medical centers, how many of you have an Office for Faculty Affairs and Faculty Development? Raise your hands really high. How many of you are not really sure? Okay, that's what I thought. So your homework is when you get back home is to find out if an office like this exists. Because if you do have a medical school, you have a responsibility for the Liaison Committee on Medical Education, the LCME, to have a dedicated person that does faculty development and handles faculty affairs. So I can assure you that a lot of these resources are there. So why bother? Why talk to them? Why engage them? Well, think about it. How many of you in the room are faculty yourselves? How many of you care about promotion? How many of you want to be associate professor? So there's now a big trend in the group for faculty affairs on the AAMC listserv to create a lot of what we're talking about here as academic scholarship that has cachet. So things like Med-Ed portal publications that would actually count as a real RCT. So I think it's first and foremost important to understand these things. The next thing is you want to engage your stakeholders, right? Top down isn't always the best approach, but it does work. So you can talk to your chair, but how many of you have vice chair for education? Any vice chairs for education in the room? Do you have any at your respective institutions? So these are new roles that are emerging, and a lot of us are really unclear as how a vice chair for education really fits into the mix. But if Tina is having a problem with her faculty members doing and executing a lot of these things, it's really the job and the responsibility of that vice chair for education to do that and create opportunities to bridge faculty development to those faculty members. Because a lot of our faculty members don't even know what a lot of this means. I'm going to make the assumption here that most faculty would like to lead a small group and flip a classroom instead of staying at home for 2-3 hours and create a brand new lecture de novo. How long do you think goes into creating 1 hour of lecture time at home? At least 3 hours. How much does it take to maybe facilitate a session where you're really flipping the classroom and using foam resources in your classroom? A fraction of that. Another thing that we've done that was very successful in bringing the training to our faculty. So in my role, I create a lot of these great workshops in pedagogy. How do we make our faculty better at feedback, better at bedside teaching, research, how to get grant funding, and then leadership. So we spend so much time in finding people all over the country to lead these sessions. How many faculty do you think actually come to these sessions? So we have about maybe 1,000 faculty members across our enterprise. How many do you think show up to these sessions? Give me a guess. 5? 30. 30. If we get 30, that's a great day. So it's really disheartening to figure out, how are we going to navigate this area where we're valuing compensation plan and faculty need to work clinically to be honored, to meet that, to meet that benchmark for promotion, but at the same time tell them, hey, listen, you need to be a better educator. You need to start adopting these things. You need to start getting outside of your comfort zone. That's pretty challenging. So pharmaceutical companies are doing it. We're doing direct to consumer advertising. Right? Patients now go to doctors and say, I want this medication. It works great. It works for my sex life. It's great for the prostate. They come in, you're like, I don't even know what this medication is. But anyway, what I'm trying to say here is if you can think about being creative in the way that you deliver this faculty development to your faculty, you can be very successful. We all have faculty meetings. I've engaged my chair and asked my chair and begged my chair to give me 10 to 15 minutes of faculty meeting every month to do focused, micro, bite-sized faculty development. Watch a video, give the resident on that video feedback. Practice bedside teaching, modeling behaviors. That's pretty easy. Another thing that we've done is we do a lot of in situ simulation. So for the simulation nerds in the room, we love our sim centers, we love our toys and the bells and whistles. Unfortunately, the literature has shown us that just because people perform well at the sim center doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do well in the real clinical environment. So the key theme here is to take that sim equipment and bring it in situ. So if you partner with your Office for Patient Safety and get money for them to address big problem areas in the hospital and use in situ simulation, that's a really nice way to integrate some micro faculty development to faculty. And that's something that we've done as well. So I spoke to you about stakeholder engagement. I spoke to you about roles and the vice chair for education role because I think this is going to be a new trend that's going to be emerging, and look out on that core listserv because I'm going to be sending out a survey through my partners, ALEM in Academic Life and Emergency Medicine, to talk about how we can really define that role and standardize that role and make sure that we have that role across the board. Linking faculty development and what we do here with appointments and promotions and making it count for their portfolio, but not just their portfolio, but to go from instructor to assistant, assistant to professor, and to assistant to associate, and then associate to professor. Because once you start speaking to that language, you start talking money, you start talking time, and faculty value both time and money. The AAMC, the group on faculty affairs, if you just go to their website, A lot of free resources on how to do this and how to do this well. And the last thing I want to engage with here is a scorecard. For those clinicians in the room, how many times do you get scorecards for how many patients you see per hour, your door-to-doc time, the decision to admit? How many times do you get that? Right? Super stressful. Do you get educational scorecards? How many of you have educational scorecards that are sent to you maybe every quarter? Raise your hands. So ever since I started my role as vice chair for education, we really wanted to honor those faculty members that are doing that. And we have a standardized scorecard that we created based on the number of lectures that they're doing that incorporates the evaluations that our residents are giving our faculty, the evaluations that our students are giving our faculty, and we have an equation. And we can say, cool. All right. This is where you are clinically. You're kind of average, but you're an educational Jedi, and that counts for something. And if that counts for something, that should count towards your compensation plan. So just as we're talking about ways that we need to think from the bottom up about getting our residents to get engaged, we need to think top down, and that's how we get our faculty engaged. And I think there's a lot of creativity, a lot of scholarship, and a lot of things that we can do on the CORD community to really advance this and create some standards in education. So that's all I had to talk about. Tina?
All right, so just to kind of recap, we talked about engaging faculty, getting your chairs involved to incentivize them, proving to them that involvement in FOMED is actually less work than your typical 50 minutes presentation. With incentivization, getting them credit for their scholarship so that they can be promoted and that they can have an incentive to actually participate in these discussions. And then, just recapping on what we talked about before, using, concepts like on-site preparation, just-in-time learning, and promoting your seniors to be leaders in the classroom so that you can kind of develop a peer-to-peer teaching curriculum, enhance peer accountability, and just develop and create buy-in for your residency and your faculty. And that's all I got.